Welcome to the Korea Pro podcast. I'm your host, Jeongmin Kim, the editorial director of Korea Pro.
And I'm John Lee, the editor of Korea Pro.
Join us for a weekly 15-minute conversation as we dive into the most pressing stories shaping South Korea and dissect the most complicated ones for you.
From politics to culture, technology to society, we've got you covered. So stay ahead of the curve and never be sidelined again.
So get ready for a fresh perspective on South Korea's news. This is the Korea Pro podcast.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Korea Pro podcast. It is now December 26th. It is a little bit before noon, and this is going to be our last podcast for this year. All right, and as any of you who've been paying attention to Korean news are well aware, there have been a lot of developments going on within South Korean politics. There have been talks about impeaching the acting president. There is talk about the sitting president, refusing to accept court documents to appear before the Constitutional Court. Jeongmin, could you kick us off, please? What's been going on?
Well, the acting president Han Duck-soo and also the prime minister, at first, when he got the handover of the presidential authority, the Democratic Party was all like, oh, we will temporarily halt the push to impeach you because the stability of the governance is more important. But I guess that only lasted for under a week, it seems. So it seems like the reason that the DP is citing against the acting president is his involvement with the martial law, or is there anything else that they are citing right now?
They are also saying that it's because the acting president, did not promulgate two bills, especially that the DP wanted. Now, previously we mentioned how Han Duck-soo has vetoed a bunch of agricultural bills. This is the discussion that I had with Truna. But beyond those agricultural bills, these two bills that the DP is particularly citing are the special prosecution bills that they want to investigate the First Lady and also to investigate the martial law declaration.
That is the 특검법, right? Special prosecutorial investigation bill.
Now, Han Duck-soo said that he wasn't going to promulgate it because he believed that there should be more National Assembly cooperation, meaning discussions between the ruling and opposition parties. Now, of course, the two parties are not cooperating for their own respective reasons. But because Han Duck-soo decided not to promulgate those two bills, the opposition party is saying that that they're planning to impeach the acting president as well.
So they will be pursuing impeachment against Han yet again. This happened before as well. But technically, is it possible for the Democratic Party to pass the impeachment bill against the acting president and who is the prime minister, without the cooperation from the People Power parties because they have the majority?
Well, when we discussed this last 2 weeks ago, we said that it's probably not going to happen because he's the acting president. And as acting president, he will probably need a 2/3 majority vote in the National Assembly to have him impeached. But that's not the argument that the Democratic Party is making. The Democratic Party is saying that, sure, Yoon has been impeached, but he hasn't been removed from office. So he's still technically the president and still the head of state, and there can only be one president at a time. And so although it was right for Yoon to be impeached with 2/3 of the vote, because there can only be one president at a time, and Han Duck-soo is only the acting president, that means, as far as what the DP is saying, they can impeach him not as the acting president, but as the prime minister, which only requires a simple majority in the National Assembly, which is 151 votes, which the DP can do on its own without any cooperation from anyone else. But of course, that's not what the ruling party is saying. The ruling party is saying that the DP is acting cynically. The Kwon Sung-dong, the PPP floor leader, said that if the Democratic Party really had reservations about the prime minister's involvement in the cabinet meeting before Yoon's martial law declaration, then they should have impeached him straight away and not allowed him to be acting president. But because they allowed him to be acting president anyway, regardless of their reservations, then the PPP is saying that he should be impeached with 2/3 requirement, as was with Yoon.
And with the Democratic Party and the ruling People Power Party, it seems also they are closely watching what Han Duck-soo's decision might be regarding the nominees for the Constitutional Court, where they have nominated 3, but then the ruling People Power Party has been boycotting the nomination hearing so far.
Right. And right now, both sides are playing the wait and see game. The Democratic Party doesn't really want to impeach Han if they don't have to, because trying to impeach the acting president as well, that's not going to look good for them either.
Exactly.
And as for the People Power Party, they're also being quite cynical about this. They're saying that as acting presidents, Han duck they're trying to have their cake and eat it both ways. They said that Han Duck-soo is the acting president and therefore requires a two-thirds majority vote for impeachment.
Like
But at the same
president.
time, yeah, but at the same time, they're also saying that because he's the acting president, he doesn't have the authority to appoint constitutional court justices. So they're both talking out of both sides of their mouth at the same time. It's all a bunch of cynical hypocrisy that we're seeing from both camps.
And it's very incoherent in both camps, like you say. What's happening at the Constitutional Court? What's the latest development there? It looks like Yoon has not been confirming and receiving any of the court materials or the documents or the summoning from multiple investigation authorities, it seems, in the past week.
Well, that's precisely it. When Yoon was impeached and he gave his speech, he said that he was not going to avoid any legal and political responsibility. But that's what he said. That's not what his actions have been. So far, the Secret Service, the presidential bodyguards, they have refused to accept any summons or letters from the Constitutional Court, from the CIO, that's a corruption investigation office, from prosecutors. They have refused to cooperate with anyone, and this is unprecedented.
Mm.
Even when we are talking about Nomuyon and Park Geun-hye, who were both impeached before, they did not hesitate to accept those letters, to accept those summons. They did not hesitate to go in for questioning when they were requested to show up. So we are in uncharted waters right now.
Stepping away from domestic politics issues for a second, we are also seeing almost the end of Biden administration's term. And it looks like President Biden has been very busy clearing off a bunch of documents ending his term. And some of them, it looks like it relates to South Korea, it seems.
Yeah, and this is going to offer some short-term reprieve. And I cannot emphasize that short-term bit quite enough. A few days ago, it was announced by the Treasury Department that both Samsung and SK have been granted several multi-billion dollar subsidy deals that were part of the CHIPS Act. Samsung and SK, of course, as we all know, have semiconductor and especially when it comes to SK, they've got battery plants in the US right now. And so they're getting subsidies. And and on Monday, US time, Biden also signed the defense bill for 2025, the $895 billion bill. And in that bill, it says that it's going to maintain US FK troops in South Korea and they're going to continue with trilateral exercises. But of course, in less than a month, Trump is coming into office. So will any of this really matter? Will Trump try to undercut those subsidies for SK and Samsung with tariffs? And especially with Colby coming in as Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, and considering the remarks that he's made about how South Korea needs to take overwhelming responsibility, quote unquote, for its own defense. What does that say about what Trump will do about the 28,500 US troops that are stationed here? There's a lot of uncertainty going on.
Speaking of which, when it comes to defense and security, is there any moves in the Biden administration to consolidate any of the decisions that it made so far when it comes to the extended deterrence for South Korea?
Well, the policy bill that we just mentioned, that also mentions extended deterrence, which is, of course, it translates to the Nuclear Consultative Group. But again, we have to pivot back and talk about Colby. Colby has been very hesitant about what this NCG really means in practice. He has said that the United States does not have the capability to focus on North Korea and China, and Colby's real aim is to counter China. And so, does the NCG even matter as soon as Biden leaves? Because we have to remember the Washington Declaration was not a treaty. And if it's not a treaty, Trump can just step into day one and say, yeah, we're not doing that anymore. And South Korea really can't oppose it.
And going ahead in the next few weeks, we have to, I think, keep a very close eye on the Democratic Party, especially Lee Jae-myung's remarks or statements regarding the Trump administration, considering how there is a very high chance that if there is a presidential election in the next few months, Lee Jae-myung might win.
Lee Jae-myung is looking like the front runner. Of course, he's got his own legal battles, and part of the reason for the delays that we've seen from the ruling party and from the president is because they want Lee Jae-myung to have his trial and be found guilty of whatever convictions he's facing, so that he will be disqualified. But regardless, if the presidential election were to take place today, yes, Lee Jae-myung would become the next South Korean president, and that will set up for quite the relationship between Seoul and Washington.
Introducing Korea Pro, your all-in-one South Korea intelligence solution. Start each day with our executive briefing on the most crucial issue and a snapshot of key Korean and international headlines. Gain deeper understanding through our original analysis on South Korea's economy, politics, security and society. Our Monday Week Ahead newsletter prepares you for upcoming business and political events, while the weekly podcast keeps you informed on recent developments. Get clear, actionable business intelligence every day. Visit koreapro.org/podcast and never be sidelined again.
And week ahead. Happy New Year, everybody, almost, and belated Merry Christmas. And next week, I think the most important thing to keep an eye on will be whether or not South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol will finally accept any of the letters or the call for summoning from the investigative authorities and the Constitutional Court.
Uncharted waters.
And also, speaking of Lee Jae-myung, there was a milestone of ruling of Lee Hwa-young, who is related to then Gyeonggi Governor Lee Jae-myung when it comes to the remittance case.
He was the vice governor, his second in command.
Right, and Lee Jae-myung's trial is also pending when it comes to this case, so we have to keep an eye on that.
Yes, we do have to keep an eye on that, because we do have to remember that Lee Jae-myung's lawyers requested for the judge to recuse himself from the remittance case because it's the same judge that found Lee Hwa-young guilty, and the lawyers are saying that because of the guilty verdict that the judge had already given to Lee Hwa-young, the judge is already predisposed to finding Lee Jae-myung guilty. And so, yeah, the Democratic Party is also using that tactic to delay Lee Jae-myung's trial.
Right, very obvious, very interesting indeed. And lastly, there is a plenary session planned for December 27th, which is Friday, when this episode will be published. In this plenary session, the National Assembly will be voting on whether or not they will confirm and appoint the 3 Constitutional Court justices, but it looks like the PPP is planning to boycott it yet again.
Yep. And I cannot say this often enough. Uncharted waters.
And that's it for this week.
Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, everyone.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in.
If you want to know more, sign up for our daily executive briefings. We brief you on all you need to know from the past 24 hours and why they matter every morning in your inboxes.
Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for your weekly dose of insight. And until next time, I'm Jeongmin Kim.
And I'm John Lay. Stay connected, stay informed, and we'll see you next time on the Great Pro Podcast.